At my twins' wedding, I learned how easy it is to disappear while still breathing. The room was all crystal and mirrors, and I was parked behind a tower of flowers like a prop that someone forgot to move. People did that careful sidestep around my chair like I was expensive furniture that might scratch their shoes if they got too close. And I smiled at the smile I'd rehearsed for 3 years. The I'm fine really smile. While Maya floated across the floor in satin, and the man she loved looked at her like the world had finally stopped to listen. My aunt dropped a slice of cake and a compliment that meant we chose a dress that won't draw attention. A kid in a bow tie asked why I sit in that all the time. His mom panicked. I told her it was okay, because children ask, and adults assume. Then a shadow fell across my little island of peonies, and I heard a calm voice say, "Excuse me, the kind that carries without trying." I looked up, and it was Evan Hart. Yes, that Evan. And he held out a hand like an honest question. "Would you like to dance?" And the whole ballroom went soft around the edges like it was waiting on me to answer. I said what my fear always says. "First, I can't. Not like you mean." And he didn't flinch. "Me neither," he said, half smile. "I've never danced with a woman in a wheelchair. I figure we can learn together then." He crouched so our eyes were level, and took my hands and let the band's old swing tune pull us into a rhythm that felt like being seen without being studied. When the music asked for a turn, he walked a slow circle around me and never broke our connection. People watched, but for once it didn't feel like pity. It felt like a door had cracked open. After the song, he asked for coffee. Not in a glass penthouse, but at the Blue Lantern, a 24-hour diner that smells like hash browns and second chances. "My car or yours?" he asked. Like the mechanics of my life were a preference, not a problem mine, I said. And he waited while I did the transfer, the ramp, the belt. Every small dignity I don't negotiate anymore. And if you've ever been evaluated by strangers with kind eyes, you know why that mattered. You know what I mean. We talked the way you talk at 1 a.m. No small talk. Just the true stuff, I told him. I was a freelance designer who kept projects small because safe started to feel like oxygen. He told me tech talks about connection, but forgets that listening is a feature, not a slogan. And before the coffee cooled, he said, "Tomorrow I want to show you something." He took me to adaptive sailing on Lake Meridian, where the wind smells like open doors. The boat was rigged so I could work the lines. The hull leaned, the sail filled, and something in my chest I thought was broken. Let go, I laughed, the kind of laugh you don't pose for, and he watched my face like that was the whole point of coming. "Favorite horizon?" he asked over the water, "the one I thought I'd never see again," I said. And yeah, that happened. On the dock with taco grease on our fingers, he told me about a role he'd been building without the right person to hold it. Director of Inclusive Experience Denver, a real team and a real mandate, not a mascot, a leader. "Our thing, if it becomes a thing, is separate." He said, "You can say no to me and yes to the work or the reverse. Either way, I'll respect it. Power without pressure is rare." So I went home and called my mother, and she gave me the truth through her fear. "Sweetheart, men like that don't usually marry women like us." Her voice soft and sharp at the same time. "What if you're a project?" I stared at the blinds and felt the old shame try to climb back in. "I'm not a project," I said out loud, so I would hear it, and the next morning I told Evan yes, not to him, to me. Denver didn't wait for me to get brave. It just was big sky, bigger glass, a building humming like its own weather system. My team looked like the industry until you looked closer. Rachel, with a brain like a scalpel and a hoodie to match Marcus, who listens the way reporters listen. Jen, who has been pushing for years and needed someone with authority to keep her from burning out. I told them I'd never run a big team. They told me they'd never had a leader who could name the problem from the inside without making the inside the whole story. We started with alt text that didn't just say 3 people by a window, but captured the mood. Your best friend would add if they were standing there. Rollout felt like handing keys to people who'd only ever been passengers. Messages arrived that said, "Thank you for seeing me," and I slept for 8 hours for the first time in forever. Then failure, knocked quiet at first, then loud. Our real-time captions for atypical speech stumbled in the wild. Garbled words turned real voices into punchlines. A tech blog used a headline that made my stomach cold. The board wanted heat maps and explanations. And in the hallway, our COO, Veronica Slate, gave me a look that had an agenda. "You asked us to trust you," she said, voice like a whisper knife. "You're expensive trust," I told her. "Leadership isn't leaving a broken feature live because it's on the roadmap. We pulled it in an hour, and I took the blame like I was paying a bill that had my name on it. We went back to school, not the glossy kind. The kind where speech-language pathologists and AAC users teach you why your assumptions are rude and how patience is a design spec. We threw out our normal map and built profiles that learned with the speaker and coached the listener. At the same time, tone cues, humane prompts, consent baked into every suggestion, familiarity weighted over perfect diction, and above my monitor, Rachel taped a note that became our north. Teach the platform to listen. Nights got long, weekends blurry. Apologies turned into time spent in other people's shoes. 2 things happened at once because life loves a pile-up on the morning of our quiet relaunch. We watched users who had every right to drag us crack a smile when the captions finally landed on their meaning. Not just their syllables, a message came in. I will never forget, I used to avoid posting because my voice made people impatient. Today, I told a joke and the laugh was for the joke, not for how I sound. I sat in my car and ugly cried with relief. And that afternoon, Evan came to my office and closed the door like someone setting a fragile thing on the desk. "I should have told you sooner," he said, hands open. "I'd heard about you months before the wedding. Darius showed me your portfolio and said his future sister-in-law was brilliant and scared when he invited me. He said, 'Maybe talk to her if it feels right.' It felt like the air left the room, so the dance was a plan," I said flat. He shook his head, quick, then slow, no plan, curiosity. Yes, intent to help if invited, yes. The rest was lightning. I wanted to throw him out, and I wanted to trust him both at once. "No more missing pieces," I said, "even if the truth makes me doubt no more," he said, and meant it. He didn't propose on a rooftop. He took me back to the lake that had given me my lungs back. We sailed until the light went gold, then drifted. "You told me your favorite horizon was the one you never thought you'd see again," he said, pulling a small ring that looked like a promise you intend to keep. "I want to spend my life building you new ones." "Lena Brooks," he added with a voice that cracked where it counted, "will you marry me and argue with me and build things with me and talk me out of my worst ideas and into my best ones for as long as we get?" I said yes, the way you say your own name. We didn't do a palace. We did a garden in the foothills and designed the reception, like a blueprint for how parties should work. If everyone mattered, wide paths, low tables, interpreters signing next to the band, like they'd always belonged there. The seating chart was a conspiracy to make strangers into friends. Maya toasted the way only sisters can. I love the way my sister refuses to disappear. And our first dance was imperfect and somehow perfect anyway. We did our little circle trick, and the room cheered like they'd seen a win. I guess they had. If this were a movie, we would cut to black there and let you live in the glow, but real life doesn't respect act breaks. 2 weeks later, an op-ed landed with my name in the headline. "When Love Meets Power, the Ethics of Sleeping with Your CEO." And it was written like a question, but punctuated like a verdict. Anonymous sources were brave off the record, my inbox filled with strangers grading decisions they didn't have to live with. The board asked for a discussion about optics, and I sat at my kitchen counter with a chipped mug that says nevertheless, and asked myself harder questions. Do I believe I earned the chair I sit in? Do I believe two things can be true at once? That I love a man with more leverage than I'll ever have, and that my work stands on its own? Do I believe in what we are building enough to stand up when the room is tense, and the easy thing would be to shrink? Here's what I know. I can't control the story other people will write about my life. I can control showing up to rooms I used to be invisible in. I can control whether the tools I ship make strangers listen better. I can control telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. I can control loving a man who never touches my chair without asking and wipes mustard off my chin at a food truck, because that's who he is when nobody's watching. And yeah, that matters. So tell me what you see when you look at this. The dance, the job, the failure, the fix, the ring, the headline. Do you see a woman who got lucky or a world that finally widened a little? Do you think love and power can sit at the same table without flipping it? Have you watched someone get written off because of their body or their accent or their chair, and then watched them prove the room wrong? Drop your take in the comments, argue with me, share the bias. You've seen the justice you've witnessed the moment you decided to stop disappearing. And if someone you love needs a hand across the floor, send them this and ask the only question that ever changed anything. Want to dance?